Hello everyone. Today for this discussion, we have Divya Narayanan, Executive Director at Jakta Organization, a campaigning organization working towards citizen empowerment. And today we are talking about the reversal of the Biodiversity Heritage Site tag for the Cantonment Railway Colony. The colony was declared Bengaluru's second Biodiversity Heritage Site in September 2025, which was a rare win that came after sustained citizen protests against large-scale tree felling for a proposed commercial project. But on December 6th, the state government rolled back that notification, once again putting nearly 370 heritage trees in the colony at risk. To start with, Divya, what does the Biodiversity Heritage Site designation meant for the Cantonment Railway Colony, and why did it matter to local residents and conservationists?
So I think given the way Bangalore is going in general, the way we're developing here, I think um, it was very important because it was a large piece of land, 8-acre parcel of land within the Vasantnagar area. And especially because it's in the heart of Bangalore, I think it means a lot to have that biodiversity tag there in order to save these trees. And, Bangalore as a city, you're already seeing a shrinking green cover where, we're seeing worsening heat and air quality issues, and eliminating such an important urban biodiversity zone in the middle of the city, I think would be disastrous for the city. During the public consultation earlier in the year it was not about people coming from, say, a Hebbal or a BTM or really far away coming for the public consultation. We actually saw a lot of people who live within a few kilometers of the cantonment area, right? Because this was going to be something that will directly affect them, which is why they showed up. It meant, if the cutting of trees meant a commercial complex, it would mean more traffic, it would mean more congestion, it would mean worsening air quality. And so for the people there, it meant a lot, and it would drastically change their lives, which is why they showed up there.
Despite revoking this, you know, biodiversity heritage site that was earlier given, the government has halted tree felling. How do you see this, and do you think this will protect the trees?
So I think this is still a temporary measure, right? I think the next hearing is sometime in February, if I'm not mistaken. And I think while there is this stay order, the larger context here is this a little bit of a confusion as to who this land belongs to. And so does railway land come under environmental law, which it does? And so there was some misconception there where, railway land, because it's railway land, they don't need state permission, etc. But I think this stay order is important for now, while we then sort of figure out, okay, what's next? How can we, get more people together to ensure that all the departments involved realize how important these trees are. And because the issue here is there is so much ambiguity around center state clearances. It's adding so much uncertainty about not just for this campaign, but also about the future of land use and conservation protections and patterns, and that we're going to see moving forward. And so, like, the government themselves are not clear on who is supposed to give permission for who can give a biodiversity tag, etc. I think it's going to lead to a lot more confusion in the future.
So can we say that this halt is temporary and it can't give a long-term
It is
protection?
temporary because I think, in the next we will get to know in the next hearing what happens. Even though the land belongs to Indian Railways, the Karnataka Preservation of Tree Act still applies, the KPTA still applies, and actually any cutting without written permission is not permitted, is illegal. And for example, when the notification was rolled back, I think there was some news around bulldozers and JCBs being found there, and that scared people a little bit because it almost seemed like they were preparing for a violation. And which is why this sort of high court stay is important. But again, it is, while it's important, it's not a final notification anyway, so we'll have to wait and see.
So what was the reason given by the state government for revoking the tag? And in your opinion, is this a valid reason?
I think the reason here was that it was railway land. It was railway land and BBMP land, and so it doesn't, permission from the tree officer is not good enough. The land belongs to the railways, and so I think that was the main sort of broader context here. And I think the biggest issue was that the center, because it's railway land, the center and the environment ministry were not consulted. So, and I don't think it is valid because they need to get, I think all of this confusion is being passed on us when they themselves don't know what's going on. I think they need to figure all of this out first, which again is showing so much callousness in this whole process, right? Where it's not being taken seriously. And I don't think people are realizing, I don't think the government's realizing how important this land is. And you can't just, again, just like how we see even on the street, right? Like if a pipe bursts, do we go to BDA? Do we go to BWSSB? There's always this confusion. Agencies not talking to each other. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, where, things are being passed around between railways, environment ministry, BBMP. They need to like figure out all of this and be very clear, be transparent with the public as well, release all the important documentation, so that we can then sort of look at it critically, because there is going to be continued public scrutiny, and there are going to be legal petitions, and objections are sort of shaping and will shape how authorities act on issues like this. And so I think getting that clarity is very important, because it leads to a lot of uncertainty in the future.
And apart from this, revoking of this tag is definitely a huge backlash for the ecology. But how does it affect the trust that the community has on the government? Because this was one after no, a very long protest of thousands of people, and then you give the heritage site tag, and then you just revoke it, saying that these were not consulted. So it could definitely affect the trust that the community has on the government. How do you see that?
When the government first recognizes an area's ecological value and then withdraws that protection without clear public explanation, it sends a very troubling message that these kind of environmental decisions are reversible at their own convenience, and it is not something that's anchored in science or public interest or for the future of the city. For the average citizen that participated in consultations, believed that due process mattered, this feels like you're changing the rules in the middle of the game. That then, because see, public trust ultimately depends on predictability, it depends on transparency, and in general, good faith. When this kind of rollback sort of weakens this whole system, right? And then in the minds of the people, then there will be some doubt whether citizen participation is even matter, whether it even matters, or it's meaningful, or whether even expert assessments, do they even carry weight, whether environmental safeguards, can they then withstand pressure from several powerful interests, right? Those are also questions that come up, because we're seeing that, say for example, with the Aravalis in Delhi as well, right? Like the protection that Aravali had for so long, is it going to withstand certain powers? We don't know that. And for a city that is already struggling so much, Bangalore city that's already struggling with climate stress, I think there is a strong need for people to feel confident that the government will stand by their own commitments, especially when these commitments are talking about irreversible ecological assets in our city, right? And I think once this trust is broken, it's going to be far harder to rebuild than just protecting, a few trees.
Trees, yeah, true. And what are the current demands of the local residents or conservationists? And do you think citizens may have to return to protests again?
I mean, I think that's what we're doing currently. We're trying to figure out what next. I think for the very clear demand right now is to pause all ground activity until, legal processes are complete. We also want to make sure that all of the documentations, whether it's the tree census or project plans, approvals, all of that need to be made public. There needs to be a lot of, transparency in this process. I think one of the things that we're not doing anymore is seeing trees as critical infrastructure of our city. That trees are actually part of the infrastructure, just like roads and, drains or whatever, right? It's not about destroying this infrastructure first and then justifying it later. And the other thing, we've seen what compensatory afforestation does, right? And this is not just saplings that can be replaced. These are trees that have been around for 50 to 100 years, and I think no compensatory plantation of any kind can replicate that. For now, this is where we are. We're also in the process of strategizing a little bit as to what next, while there is a stay order at the moment. We also need to move from the mindset of permission to cut to isn't it our duty to protect, right? I think that kind of little bit of a shift is required. I mean, it's not a little bit, sorry, it's a big shift is required. And really like weaving ecology into city planning and not just project clearances, because that's what we're seeing right now, right? Like trees are always part of, if a project comes up, we're not looking at can the trees be part of the project. We're always like, how many trees do we need to cut for this project, right? That's often that sort of lens that that trees are being looked at from. I think we also like, I think the biodiversity tag is useful. I think maybe we're looking at a future where we need stronger, legal categories for urban green spaces. Tree, looking at them as tree clusters, what are their ecological functions? And I think the broader idea needs to be that the protection of these trees and urban green spaces need to survive changes in government or land ownership. I think it needs to go beyond all of these things. And so I think that's the future that I'm thinking of in the moment. But even like when I say trees as infrastructure, I think transparency is also infrastructure. I don't think we're looking at, because that the sort of the opaqueness that we see in our processes right now are also eroding trust, right? I think there needs to be, public disclosures on, whether we're doing tree census or data, project alternatives that have been considered, all of that public, I would say public dashboards for, all of this information and permissions and all of that. I think we're at a point where information, I mean, ideally, information has to be public by default. It can't be an afterthought, because that's only then will sort of resistance come down and, legitimacy will increase.
I understand that considering Bangalore is a city with a lot of active citizens and
Yeah.
rich citizen participation, this is very much worrying. And as we already spoken about how this can change, how government needs to, have a shift in the mindset of looking at these kind of ecological spaces. How could citizens contribute more? Like in this particular case, we can already say that there is a huge citizen participation, but going forward in cases like this, if it might happen in the future, how could citizens ensure that they give their full efforts?
Yeah. So I think, so even for this issue, right, the public consultation itself was demanded by the public, right? The consultation itself was not in place initially. We had sent in, I think I want to say about 3,000 emails to the railways and the BBMP demanding public consultation, after which a public consultation was had. And even for that, whether it was us and other citizen groups, active citizens, pushed out messages saying public consultation is on this date, this time, this location, show up, right? And we mobilized about 100, 150 people to come there. And for a lot of people, it was their first public consultation. For some of them, they've been doing this for a really long time and wanted to, get on the mic and have their voices heard. For a lot of young people, it was their first time. And it was also a way for them to see what public engagement truly looks like in governance in person. Because what's also happening is we're seeing public engagement in governance being made more and more inconvenient with every passing year. We're seeing, authorities asking for objections exclusively via post. An average citizen who goes to work every day in the morning is not going to take time out of their day to go to the post office and send a speed post, right? Like even so, things have to change there. You have to make this convenient. The announcement of the public consultation can't be in one small box in the corner of the newspaper where nobody can see it, right? Which is where people like us, we come in, citizen groups come in, where we make noise about it and mobilize people there. Citizen participation in Bangalore has always been fairly good. We have very active citizen groups here, people who really care about Bangalore, and especially green spaces. I mean, that garden city tag is something that people are extremely emotional about. And, so that I don't think this is ever going to be a problem in Bangalore. People will show up. It's just that sometimes, when things like this happen, like a revoked notification, things like that, trust is eroded. But otherwise, we know for a fact that citizens will show up. It's just that we need to, again, even the messaging around this, right? Like, how do you actually talk to people about an issue like this? It can't be that, oh, if you're cutting trees, we're accelerating climate change. It means nothing to the average citizen. We have to talk about how it's going to affect their daily lives, how, destroying a green space is going to, whether it's going to contribute to the increase in heat in summer or increase in congestion in that area, where it's going to be, your daily life is going to be disrupted, right? Things like that. I think it involves a lot of thinking through messaging as well to mobilize people. But I don't think it's a problem in Bangalore, at least when, especially when in a hyper local area, we do see people coming out. I mean, again, when I think about a campaign like this, I don't think about if it's cantonment. I don't expect someone from Hebbal to come for the public consultation. And I don't think it's required. I think local people need to show up, people who are going to be directly affected by it. And which is exactly what we saw in a campaign a few years ago in Sankey, the Sankey flyover that was supposed to come up, right? Just that Malleshwaram Sankey area, they were the only people who were very active, did all kinds of events. Came out on the streets, they filed RTIs, they went and met their decision makers, they signed petitions, all of that. And that's all that was required. That campaign, I think, had 35,000 signatures. That's it. And we were able to move things, right? So it doesn't require all of the city to come together. And I think that's something that has also been a shift in the way we think of campaigns as well, that we don't need the whole city to come together for a small patch of land. We just need the area there, the people who are going to be directly affected to show up. And people who are affected, most people will show up. At least representatives will show up.
And for me personally, live near Cantonment. I live in Benson Town, so I could be, every time I pass through Cantonment, it feels different because of the number of trees it has. It cools down
Yeah.
immediately during summer, and if people understand, the importance of such spaces, I think things will be positive. And yeah, that's all from my side. Thanks for your time, Julia. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.